Welcome to the channel, Jaden Chase. Now, this is definitely not the news that the defense team for Noel Maitland was looking forward to hearing. Andrew Holness has stated that if the murder accused in the Donna Lee Donaldson case is found guilty of capital murder, the punishment will be death or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. And if it's non-capital, the penalty would be 45 years to life. The minimum would be 45 years before he's eligible for parole. Now it is clear, if the murder accused does not change, it stands to a guilty plea. Noel Maitland might face capital punishment. Now, this is a major update in the Donna Lee Donaldson case. The Jamaican government is moving to change the penalty for murder. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says this is being done to speed up the process of showing citizens in Jamaica that the government is serious about tackling crime and violence. And he says this new legislation is being done with speed and intent, as his team is hoping to finalize the proposal at Jamaica's first cabinet meeting for the year. Now, Holness stated that there's also a division in the use of certain constitutional tools in an attempt to stop crime from persisting. These constitutional tools, where Holness has speak of, are capital punishment, as it is still a law that is on the books. Holness was quoted as saying, as society moves back and forth on academic argument, hinting that this is not based on the reality. People are losing their lives, and the more we remain divided on the subject and on taking instrumental and decisive actions, criminals feel as if they can find ways to hide from the law. Now, speaking of the constitutional tools, the Prime Minister emphasized that when the government uses these tools, it does so with the highest respect and regard for human rights. Now, some would say this is not always true, as based on a statement from an officer speaking to a woman a returning resident. Let's just leave it at that. A returning resident, someone who resides overseas but grew up in Jamaica, returned and was here. And an officer was quoted as telling her that because of the SOE, certain constitutional rights are being overlooked. Now, we can't have constitutional tools that overlook constitutional rights. It doesn't make no sense. And the back and forth which the Prime Minister speaks of is the same back and forth that moves a third world country into a first world country. And third world countries are considered as the developing world. So the aim is always to move a third world country to a first world country. You have to keep in mind, the people are still of the mindset that the reason why crime and violence can continue to flourish is not only because of the people who are push it, but because of how the economy is. Because these individuals who are individuals for use, you can always find them based on the fact that year after year, you have youth that leave educational institutions and not have no career path based on the subjects that they receive at these educational institutions. Now, based on these statements from the Prime Minister, we see why the DPP was also stating that she has been in talks with attorneys representing certain accused individuals, and that there's also a backlog at the court. And that if certain of these accused change their stance to a guilty plea, then these situations would not have to be tried in open court. And with the Donna Lee Donaldson murder trial said to be one of the next big high-profile cases, I remember there are still other high-profile cases that have not been dealt with. And basically, the DPP are saying in certain cases, prosecutors have so much evidence against the accused. They must say why them still waste the court's time. Now, in the Donna Lee Donaldson case, people that say the amount of evidence that the prosecution has against the accused seem to be whole heap. So much so that every time the accused went for bail, Every time Noel Maitland went for bail, his attorney stated that it is almost as if the prosecutors were there in wait with new evidence. And that every time these pieces of evidence were presented to the judge would deny bail. And if it is true, and based upon how we say most cases work, it must be true. The prosecution has more evidence. But them not use it. There was never any need. The prosecution is not into the practice of presenting evidence to the media just to present evidence to the media. Remember, these are pieces of evidence that will get used in our trial. The only reason why we know that these pieces of evidence are in the possession of the prosecution is because the accused was seeking bail. And these are the evidence that them use to stop the bail. But them have whole heap more. Whole heap more where them not talk about it. We don't know what go on. But if this new piece of legislation is passed by the cabinet, this will be the new rules for those who get convicted for capital murder and non-capital murder. And the Prime Minister is stating that this will be used as a deterrent from individuals who are aiming to disrupt the country's progress with the continuous crime and violence that we see take place. They can't now benefit the country. We not see that benefit the community. I want to see that benefit the individuals. Communities that we see, I go at it with other communities. We don't see the communities that uplift. We see what go on in West Kingston with one community versus another community where they cross the road from each other. We don't see the communities that uplift. Some would say they were better off united. Would you believe? Some would say Western Kingston was better off when these two feuding communities were aligned as one. Would you believe? When these two communities were aligned as one, the crime and violence that we see take place in Western Kingston now, we never see it. Disapprove. So while we see a culture where crime and violence is a somewhat regular occurrence, it not benefit nobody. Like I said this though, in other first world countries, there is capital punishment. In North America, there is capital punishment depending upon which state. And that is how it would differ from in Jamaica. But crime and violence still continues to occur in North America. Regular. Some of the worst types that you have ever heard. Some of the most horrific stories that you have heard about crime and violence are from overseas. And that is common knowledge to Jamaicans residing on the island. But to see what take place, the people have realized that if this is allowed to continue happening, the next generation will see it as the norm. And that is where the problem is. Because the crime and violence that was documented in the 90s and early 2000s is different from what we see happening in the 2010s. Different generation of youth will not have the same moral compass as the individuals are them forefathers. Talk to me in the comment section. Tell me what you think. Will these new laws being tabled at the cabinet help to reduce the crime and violence? We'll see. Will these new laws cause the murder accused in the Donna Donaldson case to change his stance to a guilty plea? Well, talk to me in the comment section. If that's what you think, talk to me in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, let's pass through, click the subscribe icon, then the bell icon, and of course put it on all. And this is how you know will be notified of all fresh content as soon as fresh content is uploaded and made available for you right here on the platform. The like icon is also in close proximity to the share icon. Drop a like and bust a share. Tell a friend, tell them sister and them brother them for check out the channel, check out the reasoning, join the discussion. And of course, we are going to a quick recap. Andrew Holness, along with his team, is tabling new legislation for capital murder and for non-capital murder. As I'm saying, if you're new, subscribe, share, like. And to the reason again, My sentiments for you and yours, if you want to live, love, and prosper, if you want to stay tuned.